Welcome back to another episode of Sports-Fixx. I am your host, Carson Becker, and today we're talking about another college football playoff ranking that came out last night. Not too many changes here. Really only one swap between two teams in the top 12, so not too much here. We do have a couple of different matchups because of that swap, so I'll go over that. And then there's also a couple teams that are sitting just out. I'll talk about that as well. And we'll talk about all the matchups in the college football playoff and how I think it would turn out for how it's set up at this point. Obviously, it's going to change by the end of the year, most likely. So we'll see what happens after this weekend, rivalry weekend. We'll see. So before I get into the matchups, we have a couple teams sitting just out of the playoffs. Starting off with Utah sitting at 9-2. They'll probably need some help if they want to get in. They have Kansas to end their season. They'll probably need a couple teams to lose to get in. I don't see them getting in, but they do have the potential to get in. Maybe if, I don't know, Texas Tech loses their last game and makes it even bigger there. We'll see if, like, Big 12 gets interesting or something. We'll see, but I don't see them getting in, but they are sitting just out of the playoff, sitting in the 12th spot, so we'll see if maybe they potentially get into the playoffs. And then the other team, Michigan, sitting at 15th in the country. They have Ohio State to close out the season. If they go and win that game, they could potentially play their way into a playoff spot. Also, if they win that game, they could potentially be in the Big Ten championship and win their way into a playoff spot as well. So a lot of implications in that game. Ohio State versus Michigan, rivalry weekend, the game. There's going to be a lot of potential ways for Michigan to get in and for Ohio State to maybe drop some spots if they lose. And if they win, then they're in the Big Ten championship and still the number one team playing for a Big Ten championship, and nothing really changes. But those are two teams I wanted to talk about that are sitting just out, that have the potential to get in. Obviously, there's a couple other teams, but I don't really know if I see them getting in either. You also have, like, Tulane. If Tulane was to go and lose their conference championship, or maybe if they lose this week and don't play for a conference championship or something, there's other Power 4 teams that could potentially get in. And you would say, like, JMU still has a 50% chance of getting in. If they go and win their conference, they could potentially get in. And there's a couple other teams that could get in as well. So watch out for that this week. There's going to be some great matchups all weekend, and it should be a great rivalry weekend once again. So now to the playoff bracket here. We'll get to the new matchups that we would have for this bracket. And one new matchup, you would have Miami versus Oregon at this point. Now, Miami, most likely, they're not going to be in that spot. Most likely, that's going to go to the ACC champion, which is looking like is either going to be UVA or Pitt. Both those teams do have to go and win their last games. Pitt has to play Miami, tough game, and UVA has to go play Virginia Tech. So two pretty tough games for them, but those are the teams with the best odds to go and play for an ACC championship. So Miami most likely not going to be in this spot, but as it looks right now, we would have Miami versus Oregon. They'd have to go play in Eugene late December. Good luck with that, Miami. I would take Oregon in that one, without a doubt. Dante Moore and that offense really looked good this past weekend. I think they finally impressed me. Their offense looked really good. Their passing game, run game, they looked very good against USC. So I would definitely take Oregon in that matchup. It's not looking like we're going to see those two teams play, but if they were to play, I would take Oregon. Miami also playing pretty well. If they can cut down on the interceptions, the turnovers, they'd be probably in a better spot at this point in the season, but just didn't work out for them. So the other new matchup would be an SEC matchup here in the first round, Alabama versus Ole Miss. That'd be a great game. I mean, Lane Kiffin versus Kalen DeBoer, Alabama versus Ole Miss at Ole Miss. I think it would be a great game. We all know Lane Kiffin, of course, talk about leaving, maybe, potentially. They're talking about something coming out after the Egg Bowl on Friday, so we'll see kind of what happens with Lane Kiffin, but that would be a great matchup that team could definitely, whichever team won that game could definitely go and beat an Indiana team as well, so the winner of that matchup could definitely see themselves in the Final Four, so But that would be a great matchup. That's the other matchup we would have with Ole Miss and Oregon flipping spots. Obviously, Oregon most likely going to play the ACC champion, which is still, we don't know who it's going to be. UVA Pitt could even drop down to SMU, could be that champion. So we'll see what happens there. But Ole Miss, Alabama playing at a very high level, had a little hiccup against Oklahoma, as we know, got a couple turnovers, really killed them in that game. They cut that out. They will be fine. It was probably their worst game played since that Florida State game, so not much there for them. I think Alabama will have to go and play a really good game against Auburn in Jordan-Hare. That will be a very tough game this weekend, so definitely watching that one. And obviously, the playoff, like I said, it's going to change. Miami's probably not going to be there. Some of these teams are going to have to lose with conference championships. Texas A&M could potentially play Alabama, and Alabama wins, then they could jump way up. Texas A&M could fall pretty far. Ohio State, Indiana, if they play in the Big Ten championship, they might not move, other than maybe the winner jumps ahead of the loser, but they might not lose. So a couple of things that could change. Big 12 champion maybe jumps in or something to the top four. Who knows? So a lot of potential for changes in the playoff, and a lot more really good games the rest of the season. So we'll see kind of what happens the rest of the season. Rivalry weekend coming up this weekend. Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. We'll talk about it all in the next episode of Sports-Fixx, where I'll go into the preview, all the best games. There's a ton of them. It will be a bigger episode, and I will talk about all the matchups in that episode. So that's all I have for this episode of Sports-Fixx. Thank you for watching. I am Carson Becker, and I will see you next time.